English language channel or keep interpretation off. During the public comment period, English speakers can tune into the English language channel in order to hear the interpreted testimony of Spanish, Mandarin, and Cantonese speakers. Please note that interpretation is only available through computer audio or voice over internet protocol, not through dial-in or phone audio. This screen is for those who wish to view the meeting with American Sign Language. We will pause for a moment on this slide so that those who will be utilizing ASL interpretation are able to access the appropriate resources. Okay, I would like to start with just a few notes before we begin. Only presenters are required to share their video on this call. For the best viewing experience, we are recommending that all participants enable the features that allows you to show only the participants with a video. These first two screens provide instructions on how to do that. If you are experiencing audio issues, you can dial in at 646-558-8656. The meeting ID is 895-6034-4002. And if you're experiencing more technical issues, you can email help@publicworkpartners.com. Okay. Um, all right, let's get started. So I am Emily Spokowski. I'm a senior project manager at the Mayor's Office of Environmental Coordination, or MOEC. I, along with Hillary Semel, am managing the environmental impact assessment for this project on behalf of the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Housing, Economic Development, and Workforce, which is acting as the lead agency for this environmental review. I will be chairing today's scoping meeting. As the lead agency, the Deputy Mayor's Office is overseeing the preparation and completion of an environmental impact statement, or EIS, for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal Maritime and Mixed Use Redevelopment Project. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Today, we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the environmental impact statement for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal proposal. The draft scope of work identifies all the subjects that will be analyzed in the upcoming EIS and explain how those will be studied. The draft scope is available on the Seeker Access website. The required notices advertising this meeting were published on September 24th in the City Record, the New York State Environmental Notice Bulletin, as well as the Daily News Brooklyn edition, El Diario, Tsingtao Daily, and the Brooklyn Eagle. So in the next several slides, we will address the following topics. What is environmental review? How does the process work? And what is the BMT EIS studying? What is environmental review? Seeker for the City Environmental Quality Review, or SECRA for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. The review process is by which communities, government agencies, and elected officials can identify and assess the potential ramifications that a proposed discretionary action may have on the urban environment. Whenever an action is discretionary, or to put it another way, when a government agency must exercise judgment and deliberation in deciding on a project, it must undergo a seeker/SECRA review so that the public can be aware of the full implications of the proposed actions on the foreseeable future. How does the process work? Once deemed to be discretionary and before it enters an official review process, a project must complete an environmental assessment statement or an EAS. If the EAS cannot confirm that the project would not potentially create an impact, then an environmental impact statement or EIS must be completed. In order to complete an EIS, a scope of work must first be drafted. The draft scope of work, or DSOW, is a methodologies and technical assumptions document. A public meeting must be held on the draft scope of work, which is this meeting, to take comment on these methodologies and assumptions. After the comment period is over, and in this case, the comment period ends at the end of the day on December 11th, a final scope of work will be prepared that responds to any and all comments received as appropriate. The final scope of work, or FSOW, is the basis for the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS. The draft scope of work. The scope of work identifies the project and types of environmental analysis. This includes a description of the proposed actions as they have already been described this evening, an explanation of the analysis framework, a general overview of what will be the contents of the EIS, and then a more detailed explanation of the tasks associated with preparing the EIS. The purpose of today's scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the EIS at the earliest stage possible. Toward that end, the lead agency will have an opportunity to receive comments on the draft scope from elected officials, government agencies, community board representatives, and members of the public. It's important for all voices to be heard today. We also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work. Written comments can be submitted through the end of the day on Thursday, December 11th to the following. You can email me personally, eSpokowski@moec.nyc.gov, or you can send your written comments through mail to me, the Mayor's Office of Environmental Coordination, attention Emily Spokowski, 100 Gold Street, 2nd floor, New York, New York, 10038. At the end of the written comment period, the lead agency will review all comments, those we hear today, as well as all written comments we've received. No decision will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. Comments received will be considered and incorporated and responded to as appropriate in the final scope of work. It is the final scope of work that will serve as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Please note that there will be a public hearing for this project after the draft environmental impact statement is issued. I'd like to focus on the structure of today's meeting, which is going to be divided into two parts. During the first part, the New York City Environmental Development Corp will give a brief overview describing the BMT Maritime and Mixed Use Redevelopment Project. Then the project's environmental review consultant, AKRF, will provide a short summary of the draft scope of work. During the second part of the meeting, we will be receiving comments on the draft scope. Elected officials, government agencies, and community board representatives will be given the opportunity to comment first, followed by members of the general public. The meeting will end only when everyone who has signed up to provide testimony has had a chance to be heard. This screen explains the options you have for providing comments on the draft scope of work. If you are signed up to speak before the meeting, during the registration process, we have your name and you will be called during the testimony portion of this meeting. If you did not sign up to speak before the start of the meeting, but would like to speak, Please identify yourself using the raise hand function on Zoom. Instructions for this are being shown on your screen right now and will be shown periodically during the meeting. If you are joining by phone only, you may dial *9 to indicate your desire to provide verbal testimony. Participants using the raise hand function or *9 will be added to the end of the speaker list. Once we have gone through the entire list of speakers, we will make a call for any additional speakers that have not already signed up. At that point, we will wait 10 minutes for any additional speakers. Meeting moderators will lower your hand if you have been added to the wait list to speak. I will give you a minute to read the instructions before I move on. Again, these instructions will appear periodically during the meeting. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be allowed to unmute your microphone. Please note that prompting speakers can take some time, so we ask that everyone is patient. Once your name has been called and you have unmuted your microphone, you will be asked to convey your remarks. To allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask that you please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. At the 3-minute mark, your time will expire. At that time, you will be asked to conclude your remarks. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials, for example, are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. If you choose to turn on your camera, we will be able to see you. An additional note of instructions for those of you joining by phone today. If joining by phone, dial 646-558-8656 and enter the meeting ID 895-6034-4002. If you wish to provide testimony via telephone, please select *9 to raise your hand. Please listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number. At that point, you will be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. You must press *6 to unmute your telephone, and we will be able to hear you speak. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, we will mute you again. We would like to encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register via phone using the dial-in participant hotline. Please note that muting and unmuting registered speakers may take a moment. We ask for your patience with this process. Before we begin the testimony portion of this meeting to hear your comments, we will hear from Mikkel Adget from the New York City Economic Development Corporation, or NYC EDC, representing the applicants for the proposed project, followed by Jonathan Keller of AKRF, the consultant supporting the lead agency in the preparation of the project's environmental impact statement. I would now like to introduce Mikkel from New York City Environmental Development Corp., who will provide a brief description of the BMT Vision Plan. If you are joining us on your computer or via the Zoom app, you will see the presentation on your screen as she speaks.
Thank you so much, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mikkel Adgate, and I'm Senior Vice President at New York City's Economic Development Corporation. As EDC's representative at today's meeting, I will cover information related to the BMT Vision Plan. The Brooklyn Marine Terminal, or BMT, is a generational opportunity to transform a key site on the Brooklyn waterfront into a modern maritime port and vibrant mixed-use community. As outlined in the BMT Vision Plan, the project goals are to maintain, modernize, and electrify the port so that it responds to 21st century industry trends, is financially self-sustainable, and supports the Blue Highway network. Provide a range of public open space throughout the site. Improve resiliency to prepare the site and adjoining neighborhoods for sea level rise and climate change. Ensure the Atlantic Basin area includes active uses such as a hotel, retail, and light industrial that support and benefit the Red Hook community and the city as a whole. Ensure that housing on the site is at a range of affordability levels and densities, and that the affordable housing is permanently affordable. Improve the site's connectivity with a focus on pedestrian-first strategies and designs and a transportation network to help address vehicle congestion, not only adjacent to the site, but also throughout the adjoining neighborhoods, and improve bus speeds to intended rider destinations. And ensure the project is financially viable and the port is well capitalized and that risks are mitigated throughout project implementation. The BMT Vision Plan, which was approved in September 2025, was developed through an extensive engagement process led by the Brooklyn Marine Terminal Task Force, input from advisory groups, and additional public engagement through both workshops and focus groups. Over 12 months, the BMT Vision planning process engaged over 4,000 people and collected 950 survey responses through 34 task force meetings, office hours, and small group discussions, 27 public workshops, 23 advisory group meetings, 16 information and feedback sessions, 13 additional stakeholder engagements, 11 site tours, 9 NYCHA Red Hook Houses East and Red Hook Houses West engagements, 5 canvassing efforts in Red Hook with Green City Force, and 3 town halls. The graphic shown below was included in the vision plan to show the 3 main areas for the future of BMT: Atlantic Basin, a container and flex terminal, and BMT North. The vision plan included commitments and plans for the future of the area related to housing, retail, transportation, and much more. The vision plan and project will deliver 6,000 units of housing, 40% of which are affordable, significant community facility, commercial, light industrial space, and a 60-acre modern all-electric port. Facilitation of the transformational BMT Vision Plan requires numerous city, state, and federal approvals, which are outlined in the Draft Scope of Work, or DSOW. These include, but are not limited to, disposition, approval of the General Project Plan, or GPP, and various city and state funding commitments, which are all triggers for SEQR and SEQRA. I will now introduce Jonathan Keller with AKRF to provide an overview of the environmental review framework and scope.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikkel. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Keller, and I am with AKRF, the environmental consultants working on the BMT EIS. We are pleased to be here with you again tonight and to hear your comments on the draft scope of work for the EIS. To help support tonight's comments and testimony, I'm going to give a brief overview of the environmental review for the BMT. More details can be found on the draft scope of work, which is available online as was shown on the screen and in the presentation. The environmental review will look at the potential effects that the BMT project could pose to the environment. To understand how the project would affect the environment, we first need to create a comparison framework, which is comprised of 3 main components. First, we need to know what the project is and the proposed approvals. This is known as the with action condition. What is the future if the proposed actions are approved? We have that in the BMT Vision Plan, and we'll dig into those details in the next slide. The second piece we need alongside the proposed project details is a build year or an analysis year. What is a build year? It is a conservative assumption for when the proposed project would be fully up and running and operational. Our build year is 2038. This year anchors our forecasts and projections of what the future baseline is on and around the BMT. That leads us to our last key component of the analysis framework, the no action condition. The no action condition is essentially what would happen at BMT without the project. Without the proposed approvals, what would the site look like in 2038? The BMT no action assumes that the project area would remain largely unchanged from its current state. In order to study the potential changes between the with action and no action, we need to develop assumptions around specific amounts of development that could occur by 2038. This is known as the reasonable worst case development scenario. A reasonable worst case development scenario is both reasonable in the assumptions of how much and what kind of development could occur, but also worst case so that the public can get a deep understanding and decision makers of potential mitigation, what additional measures might be needed to support these proposed changes. The BMT Vision Plan is the basis for our with action reasonable worst case development scenario. Among many other commitments, the vision plan, as outlined by Mikhail, details for the first two you've heard about, and the next are details that are enumerated in the draft scope of work. A 60-acre modern and sustainable all-electric port, a total of 6,000 dwelling units, of which 40% would be permanently affordable, 275,000 square feet of light industrial or industrial space, 250,000 square feet of community facility space, 275,000 square feet of commercial space, a 400-room hotel, and 28 acres of new destination and neighborhood open space. The BMT Vision Plan will be codified through a general project plan, the GPP, and implemented through a dedicated development corporation. The reasonable worst case development scenario takes these numbers and adjusts them upward to account for building circulation areas, elevator cores, stairwells, etc., that have not yet been designed but are relevant for our environmental studies. The increment between the with action numbers and the no action numbers is the basis for the EIS analyses of potential project effects. And here is an illustrative image of the with action reasonable worst case development scenario site plan. The proposed project would rehabilitate and redevelop critical waterfront city assets, resulting in the creation of a modern all-electric port, including a new container and flex terminal and a new cruise terminal. Upland of the port, the proposed project includes mixed-use residential development, including housing, retail, hotel, community facility, light industrial or makerspace, and district parking. The mixed-use districts include a substantial amount of new open space and infrastructure improvements to support the proposed new development. A full description can be found in the draft scope of work, specifically Section C of the project description. And last slide, until we get to your comments, is as detailed in the draft scope of work, the proposed approvals trigger analysis of a number of technical areas. The EIS will look at potential effects in all of these areas, but I'll highlight just a few here for you. The EIS will look at effects on area socioeconomic conditions, public schools, libraries, early child care centers, police, fire, and hospital coverage, open space utilization and adequacy, shadows on nearby resources, area-wide water and sewer infrastructure, transportation, including the traffic, transit, pedestrian, and parking conditions. Increased traffic can have the potential to affect local air quality levels, and therefore an air quality analysis will also be performed. The air quality analysis will also assess the effects of emissions from industrial sources. A noise analysis will also be conducted, which will examine the proposed approval's potential effects on sensitive noise receptors, such as residences, healthcare facilities, schools, or open spaces. The proposed project would have an overall construction phasing lasting longer than 2 years, and therefore a detailed construction impact assessment will also be performed. The draft scope provides a more detailed outline of how each of these technical areas will be examined, the types of data to be gathered, how these data will be analyzed, and potential impacts quantified when appropriate. In addition, the EIS will include a mitigation chapter, which will describe possible mitigation measures to address any significant adverse impacts that are identified in these analysis areas. Where impacts cannot be mitigated, they will be described as such, unmitigatable or unavoidable adverse impacts. An alternatives chapter will also be included in the EIS to evaluate reasonable options that may reduce or eliminate significant adverse impacts. At this time, the EIS is expected to analyze a no-action alternative and a port alternative. Other additional alternatives may be developed during the scoping process. Lastly, the EIS will also include 3 summary chapters, including an executive summary. As a reminder, the draft scope can be viewed in its entirety online. And I do want to stress, while this is the second of 3 scoping meetings, the scoping review period is not the end of the environmental review process. There will be more points to comment on the analyses and their conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this scoping hearing is the beginning of the public's involvement in the environmental review process. We are hosting an additional meeting in December in person on Monday, December 1st. This additional in-person scoping hearing was noticed yesterday in the previously mentioned publications. Registration links for the upcoming scoping meeting can be found on the EDC project page website. As a reminder, written comments are also welcome to be submitted via email or mail through the end of the day on Thursday, December 11th, 2025. We will keep this information up on the screen for your ease. Let's get started with the second portion of today's meeting, the public comment. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if you signed up to speak before the meeting during the registration process, we have your name and you will be called in the order you registered. If you did not sign up to speak before the start of the meeting but would like to speak, please identify yourself using the raise hand function on Zoom. Instructions for this are being shown on your screen right now and will be shown periodically during the meeting. If you are joining by phone only, you may dial *9 to indicate your desire to provide testimony. Participants using the raise hand function or *9 will be added to the end of the speaker list. The option to sign up to speak will stay open until at least 6:30 p.m., but will extend later if there are more people wanting to provide comment past that time. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to assure that everyone gets a chance to provide their thoughts here tonight. I'll begin by calling the names of those who have registered to speak, or the last 4 digits of your phone number if you are using the telephone dial-in option and not the Zoom app. Elected officials, community board district managers or chairs, or representatives of a government agency will be provided the courtesy of speaking first. Okay, so to begin, I would like to welcome Councilmember Alexis Aviles to speak on the BMT project.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexa Aviles, and I'm the New York City Council member that proudly represents the 38th District, which includes the southern portion of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal and surrounding neighborhoods, including Red Hook and Sunset Park. I'm here today to share my comments on the draft scope of work for the Environmental Impact Statement, or the EIS, for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal project. As someone who works closely with this community, I know how important the marine terminal has been, not just historically, but also in terms of what it can continue to be with the right investment and vision. This is a site that has served New Yorkers for generations, and with real care, it can continue doing so into the future. I had the opportunity to serve as the co-chair during the New York City Economic Development's Advisory Task Force process. And unfortunately, I saw firsthand how that process had so many failures for our community. It was rushed, not fully transparent, and really lacked meaningful engagement. And in many cases, sidestepped the standard planning procedures. New Yorkers have a right to expect, and our voices weren't truly heard. From the beginning, I've been clear in my opposition to introducing residential development at this site. This terminal sits in an industrial business zone, a space intentionally protected for industrial and maritime uses. Allowing housing here would set a dangerous precedent, not just for Red Hook, but for the IBZs, the industrial business zones all across the city. These zones exist to preserve local industrial jobs and provide economic opportunity, especially for working class New Yorkers, and have been under great threat as they continue to be reduced every year. Despite significant concerns and strong feedback from the community, the project seems to just have moved forward through delayed votes and decisions that I still do not support. But I want to be clear, I remain committed to the future of this terminal. I want to see it thrive in a way that supports local jobs, promotes environmental justice, and reflects the values of the people who live in the district. That is why this EIS process must be thorough and meaningful. I urge that the EIS to take a comprehensive and transparent approach in addressing several critical issues, including the site's flood risk and long-term climate resilience, the potential for both direct and indirect displacement of industrial use, the full range of environmental impacts associated with the proposed project. Particular attention must be given to the area's history of industrial contamination and the likelihood of hazardous materials, as well as to how large-scale residential development would fundamentally alter the neighborhood's character within a protected industrial business zone. The EIS must rigorously evaluate the projected increase in vehicular and truck traffic, its implications for air quality and safety, the adequacy of local infrastructure to absorb this growth, and lastly, how this project could be affected by the nearby construction of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, not construction, but existence of the BQE Expressway. It is also important to note, business disruption and displacement is also a significant concern. Infrastructure and utility impacts are needs that are particularly important for the peninsula already experiencing highly inadequate services. The scoping should be expanded beyond the noted 400 feet. And I know our community needs more time to meaningfully engage. And I'm highly concerned that even an REFI was put out into the world that is not yet considered under even this current scope. That makes me question the adequacy of the process. I will continue to stay engaged in this process to push for outcomes that reflect the priorities of this community. And after today's public scoping hearing, I look forward to providing a more detailed written comments in the areas of the draft scope that require closer scrutiny as this project moves forward. Thank you so much for the time and attention.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Okay. Moving on, periodically, you will see a list of the next 10 speakers on your screen so you can prepare for your turn to speak. When your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number is called, you will be asked to unmute yourself and we will make sure you are ready before starting the time clock. You can scroll or swipe to see the time clock on your screen to remind you of the length of time left for your testimony. Additionally, a chat message will appear when you have 15 seconds remaining. When 3 minutes have passed, you will be muted and invited to send any remaining comment to MOEC's mailing or email address. Please state your name and affiliation if you have one for the record. As a reminder, this is a scoping meeting for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, Maritime and Mixed Use Redevelopment Project. We encourage all speakers to focus their comments to the draft scope of work for this project. We also ask that speakers exercise civil conduct during their testimony. Speakers using inappropriate language will be muted and cautioned before being allowed to continue. Please also be reminded that this is not a Q&A session. Okay, let's see here. So I believe the first speaker that is on this call is Tom Fox. it appears that Victoria Alexander, Robert Puka, Nikki Kane, and Ariel Alexovich are not present. If you are here, please email help@Public Work Partners to let us know if you have joined the hearing under a different name, or to give us the last 4 digits of your phone number if you have joined by phone. The first available speaker is Tom Fox. We will give you a little time to prepare. Okay.
I'm
And
ready.
Tom, oh, perfect. Wonderful. Thank you.
Want to keep you on schedule if I can.
Thank you.
Great. Well, EDC recently released an RFEI to ascertain if there's additional maritime activity that might be appropriate for the site, and the deadline is December 15th. EDC would need time to review, consider additional maritime uses proposed in the RFEI. Therefore, the public comment period should be extended till February 10th, 2026, to allow these uses to be appropriately evaluated and potentially included in the plan as it may change, given the response to the RFEI if it was released in good faith. The City Club endorses your consideration of an all-maritime alternative in the EIS and looks forward to helping prepare such a document. The proposed plan proposes decking over 11.15 acres of open water. This is along the adjacent to the BMT North housing development that's proposed, which is just so happens 11.17 acres of property. Without getting the permits for the coverage of the open water, the adjacent property cannot be developed as housing, with BMT retaining 60 acres for public maritime. In lieu of that, we believe that other financing mechanisms available to EDC, such as IDA bonding, tax incentives, should be considered as financing as well in the scope of the EIS, as that would have much less of an impact on the environment than the construction of residential housing. If residential housing is constructed, all sanitary waste from the structures should be segmented and not released into the combined sewer system, as they would overload and significantly increase pollution in the adjacent waterway. So that water should be captured, treated separately from being dumped into the adjacent waterway. The resiliency seems kind of like a farce. I heard somebody say that the plan was to make things more resilient when there's no resiliency in the plan, not only for the site, but for the adjacent neighborhood. The City Club has prepared a resiliency paper, which we'll share with EDC in the hopes that an actual resiliency plan could be prepared.
15
when I did the
seconds.
Big U, 6 feet was the supposed increase in elevation. The area of impact should be increased. 400 feet is silly, given the impact of this. And
3
emergency
minutes.
preparedness is critical to include in the plan. Although you recognize that there's a dock being built, there's no mention of the important role this plays in emergency preparedness, like for the blackout of 65, 77, 2003, 2019, at a time when the power providers are telling us that there's increased chances of blackouts in the upcoming years. The remainder will be in our written comment. I thank you for the time and opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate your testimony. So the next person on our list is Bruce Mazer, although I do not believe he is here in this meeting. Bruce, if you are here, please let us know. Otherwise, I will move on to our next person signed up, which is Drew Gamils. And I apologize if I'm butchering people's names.
No problem. Can you hear me
Okay.
okay?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Drew.
No problem. So my name is Drew Gambles. I am a senior attorney at Riverkeeper. Riverkeeper is an environmental watchdog organization dedicated to protecting and restoring the Hudson River, source to sea, and safeguarding drinking water supplies through advocacy rooted in community partnerships. This project raises significant environmental concerns that the draft scope does not adequately address. I will focus my remarks on three critical areas: in water construction, energy use, and climate resiliency. First, the project proposed major in-water work, including rebuilding piers 8, 9A, and 9B into a single pier that will cover several acres of open water along the Brooklyn waterfront. Yet neither the vision plan nor the draft scope clearly describes the extent of this work. Before the EIS proceeds, the project design must specify the scope of fill and other materials needed, the extent of overwater coverage, and the construction methods to be used. The EIS must evaluate all in-water activities, including dredging, pile driving, and shoreline armoring, and the potential impacts on aquatic habitat, migratory fish, and benthic communities these activities may have. The scope should also ensure a thorough analysis of stormwater runoff, shoreline habitat loss, and water quality impacts associated with pier reconstruction and bulkhead upgrades. Second, the draft scope states that the future port will be fully electrified using clean energy through on-site renewable energy generation, electric cargo handling equipment, and shore power, but it provides no detail about how this will be achieved. The EIS must explain what types of renewable energy will power the port, where and how energy will be generated, stored, and distributed on-site, and what infrastructure will be needed to do this. The EIS must also include a full energy assessment. Compliance with the New York State Energy Code alone does not mean that the project will create significant energy impacts. It is insufficient for the EIS to simply include information about the project's annual energy consumption. Finally, the resiliency assessment submitted with the EIS must use local climate projections to evaluate sea level rise and flood risk that are not based on outdated projections. Given the site's vulnerability, the analysis should fully evaluate how flood protection, stormwater management, and shoreline defenses will perform under sea level rise projections for the year 2100 and other extreme weather scenarios. Overall, the draft scope lacks essential project information needed to assess environmental impacts. Key details on pier reconstruction, clean energy systems, stormwater and sewer infrastructure, and measures to minimize energy use and emissions are left undefined. Without these details, the environmental impact statement will be inadequate. Riverkeeper urges the EDC and the lead agency to ensure
15
transparency
seconds.
and to provide a comprehensive EIS that addresses these issues head-on. We look forward to continuing to engage in this process and to help ensure that any redevelopment on this site protects the river, the surrounding community, and the climate. And we will be submitting a detailed letter
minutes.
expanding on these comments. So thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight.
Thank you so much, Drew. We appreciate your testimony. The next person signed up is Alan Mukamal. Although it does not appear that you were present in the meeting, if you have just joined the hearing under a different name, or am on by phone, please let us know. Otherwise, we will move on to Chaim Gross.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Chaim Gross. I'm an architect and chair of a not-for-profit climate group called New York City 2030 District. We are a part of a network of over 20 such districts across North America, and I'm a proud Brooklyn resident and have been working with the good people at Resilient Red Hook to digest and respond to this enormous proposal. The short story here is that while many of us who have issues with the BMT scope and plan are concerned with mitigating or eliminating negative impacts, and there are many, traffic and the construction impacts are some. I'm interested in our group is primarily interested in renewable energy, building energy, and related the related climate impacts of the energy picture in New York City and beyond. rather than focus on mitigating the many potentially negative impacts here, and we can argue about housing and other issues, the opportunity here, the positive opportunity here is to have this enormous project, which touts itself as presenting an all-electric port, among other things. The opportunity here is to create a true community energy network. All of the massive earthwork, landfill, coastal protections, et cetera, that are proposed here offer the opportunity to create a true thermal energy network. Those who aren't familiar, thermal energy network is the basis of what could be the most efficient infrastructure, energy infrastructure that can serve not only the proposed project, but also the surrounding neighborhoods. It is perfectly congruent and compatible with electrification, heat pumps, and a resilient, truly clean and resilient network. Solar, community solar, battery storage, electric vehicle transportation, et cetera, are all elements of what could be a really vital and truly sustainable and resilient community energy network. I'll present along with my colleagues some more detail about this, but let's look at this as a great opportunity to address
15
the
seconds.
vulnerability, thank you, the vulnerability of Red Hook and the surrounding neighborhoods, an opportunity to model a truly 21st century energy network for the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chaim. Appreciate your testimony. Okay. We are now on to Geeta Nandan. Geeta Nandan.
Hi, I'm here. I'm actually going to submit my testimony via written comments.
Okay. And you don't want to speak. That's okay.
Thanks.
No worries. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I will look for your email. Next is Sarah Gronim.
Hi there. Thank you for letting me speak. I am Sarah Gronim. I have submitted written testimony already, and at this oral hearing, I would like to just make one point, right? And that is to continue the conversation about the perimeter of this study, the 400 feet, which is inadequate. And my particular point is following Chaim and Drew, that there is not enough investigation of the real implications of electrifying this project. That it is absolutely the right way to go, to be all electric, right? But without knowing what the grid is like in the adjacent neighborhoods, Red Hook, Carroll Gardens, Columbia Heights, Boerum Hill, there is no way to know how dovetailing this particular project into the local grid, what effect they will have. And there is nothing in the energy section of this that addresses this. No mention, for example, of consulting Con Ed. Is the current grid adequate? Do these neighborhoods already at capacity? Are there problems with brownouts now in these? What plans does Con Ed have for upgrading these networks? Chaim offers this possibility that it would be a net generator. That would be great, but it has to be studied in the larger context. This is not a project that proceeds in isolation. And even though the draft speaks at some point about that all new structures adhering to state and local building codes would not create significant energy impacts, that is simply not the case. So an assessment of that impact should be included in the EIS. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We appreciate your testimony. I believe, let's see here. The next person on okay, we have Catherine Walsh, Tibita Kanine, and Andre Mangani. I don't believe they are on the call. If you are present under a different name, please let us know so that you can speak. Otherwise, I believe our next speaker is Jacqueline Costin.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Costin. I'm a representative from Pioneer Works. I'm a staff member of this organization in Red Hook, Brooklyn. I am reaching out also on behalf of the community in regards to workforce training, job opportunities that may be presented or offered to the community through this BMT EDC project. There has been mention of, job opportunities, workforce training opportunities through this project. And just through all of the, documents, hadn't really seen sort of a comprehensive plan on how the organization, the plans are actually going to follow through with that. So curious if, the organizers have been in communication with the local organizations, ones such as Red Hook Initiative, Red Hook Art Project, Red Hook Community Justice Center, BWAC, Hook Arts Media, Pioneer Works. There's many others in the community, all that really do offer amazing opportunities for young people in the community that would benefit from more job training and opportunities with these new businesses come along with these plans. So if there can be more study, more effort for community engagement, for community outreach in regards to job opportunities, workforce training, I think that would be of great benefit to the community. So yeah, just speaking that out so that there can be a more comprehensive plan towards all of those initiatives.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I appreciate your testimony. And I would like to acknowledge that we are having an extreme weather event today in the city. If you or any of your neighbors can't join or need to drop off from the hearing, totally understandable. I would just like to remind you that we will have a meeting on December 1st in person, or you can always email me written testimony. Okay, so for our next speaker, we have Marissa Solomon.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, my name is Marissa Solomon. I'm a lifelong New Yorker and I reside in Coney Island, Brooklyn. Over the past year, I was part of a group of Coney Island residents who organized to save our waterfront community from real estate developers who are trying to privatize public land in our neighborhood in order to construct massive 40-story casino towers that would have displaced long-term residents as well as the amusement area businesses that have long operated here. Today, we are seeing a similar effort play out in the Red Hook neighborhood, where developers are also trying to privatize the waterfront public land of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal for their own private benefit and profit at the expense of existing residents, business owners, and workers. While every person in New York understands the need to build more truly affordable housing, with rents that average people can actually afford to pay, it seems as if developers are only focusing on building luxury apartment towers along the city's waterfront. The purpose of these developments are not to actually provide affordable housing for working New Yorkers, but to create more luxury apartments with spectacular waterfront views for the affluent. If New York is going to remain a place where working class people can still afford to live, it is crucial that proposals such as the current plans to redevelop the Brooklyn Marine Terminal waterfront are adequately and accurately assessed and studied for their impacts on nearby communities in order to prevent the displacement of existing residents and to truly provide economic development that benefits all New Yorkers. As such, the current 400-foot perimeter around the project site, which the draft statement of work seeks to study, is wholly and absurdly inadequate to assess the full impacts of this project on the wider neighborhoods in the area, including Red Hook, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, and Gowanus. The scoping study must be expanded to include the areas east to 3rd Avenue and north to Tillery Street. Likewise, given the current plans for the Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Project and the reconstruction of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, it is crucial that the scoping study include a cumulative construction and detour management plan to take into account the effects of these projects on the communities in the area while the construction of the BMT project takes place. We also must remember that the existing businesses in the Brooklyn Marine Terminal provide long-term employment opportunities to working-class New Yorkers that will not be replaced by the kind of luxury residential developments proposed for the site. Particularly for those New Yorkers that live in neighborhoods like Coney Island or in places like the Red Hook projects where my father actually grew up, these kind of blue-collar job positions are vitally important, and alternative plans should certainly be considered for a larger port that expands the space for more maritime businesses. This would be of much greater benefit to a wider number of working-class Brooklyn residents than more luxury residential towers would be. I therefore urge the scoping study to be expanded to include these areas. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marissa. Okay, let's see here. Next we have Brandon Hawley, but I believe Brandon is not on the line. Brandon, if you are present under another person's name, let us know. Otherwise, we will move on to our next participant, John Leva.
Hi. Can I just say first, I'm in contact with some of those people that are missing, and they're dealing with floods right now, actually, in their, businesses and properties. So let me start with, you're taking money away. This is public land, and it belongs to the people of New York, right? Because it kind of gets lost. It seems like, it's almost like we're begging for our own land. But we demand a process that starts with maritime jobs and climate resiliency and community ownership, not luxury housing on the waterfront. And we demand that the IES seriously study building housing over the BQE trench instead of wiping out maritime space, and that no action be taken until there's a comprehensive plan for the BQE. From the beginning, this was called New York City's biggest land transfer in the last 2 decades, a project of regional importance, once in a lifetime, monumental, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I expect this IES to reflect that and be as robust and comprehensive as possible and include a much larger area than is currently proposed. Can't tell me it's a plan of regional importance and all of this stuff, and then not, only go 400 feet or whatever it is after that. The IES worst case study must include not only as the site is now, but it must take into account if the EDC gave the shipping container port and all the tenants long-term 30 to 50-year contracts, as is customary in that industry, which is what has been limiting their growth up to now. This has been by design. But with the proper long-term leases, these businesses can buy machinery necessary and seek private investors and thrive. They have purposely been held back in anticipation of this moment. So when you say you'll be studying, what you'll be studying is if nothing is done on the land, and not include a scenario where these long-term leases are given to the maritime tenants. That would just be disingenuous. Also, a scenario if the BQE cantilever crumbles, what would happen then, right? Because we don't know, right? So that should be studied, of course. Because this is a port and not just any parcel of land, the IES must also cover the water and maritime. It must include the Blue Highway, and as such, every stop on the proposed path should be included, and that includes up to the Hunts Point Market. And then let me just say, finally, Portside, New York is an award-winning nonprofit and valued member of this community. If the EDC decides to evict them, it would be disastrous to this neighborhood, and the impact of that on the community must also be studied. Thank you. I'm done.
Thanks very much, John. Okay, I am going to just go through skipped names one more time if anyone has joined late. Let's see here. Victoria Alexander, Robert Puka, Nikki Kane, Ariel Alikovic, Bruce Mazer, Alan Mukamal, Catherine Walsh, Tibida Kaneen, Andre Magnani, and Brandon Hawley. Okay, if they join later, we can circle back to them. And once again, they can provide written testimony or attend our December 1st meeting. So let me move on to our next person, James Morgan. James Morgan.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, James.
Hi.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for participating. My name is James Morgan. I'm a 30-year resident of the Columbia Street Waterfront District. I'm asking for these studies to be included in the EIS, Water, Sewer, and Climate Resiliency. This project clearly triggers a sewer infrastructure analysis. The environmental review must quantify wastewater and storm loads, model combined sewer overflow changes, and size green infrastructures for real cloudburst conditions. Today, my phone's been blowing up with texts from neighbors in Cobble Hill, Red Hook, and the Columbia Street Waterfront District documenting flooding from just this afternoon's rainstorm in our homes, our businesses, and our streets. These are not theoretical risks. They're happening right now in current conditions. Yet this proposal would triple the Columbia Street population without meaningful sewer capacity upgrades or flood resiliency solutions in place. Red Hook and nearby neighborhoods have endured repeated flooding and heat stress, especially near the Red Hook houses and local schools. So this analysis must also evaluate heat exposure and public health co-benefits of the proposed open space design. We ask that the city provide full water, sewer, and CSO analysis aligned with storm projections and historic impacts and the heat exposure mitigation to be built into the design. Socioeconomic displacement and neighborhood character. With up to 6,000 dwelling units, this project meets CEQR thresholds for indirect residential and business displacement analysis. That review must account for potential impacts on industrial and maker tenants and small businesses that form the economic backbone of Red Hook and my neighborhood, the Columbia Street Waterfront. We urge the city to expand the displacement study and to include Carroll Gardens, Gowanus, and the Columbia Street Waterfront, and to model speculative and post-development effects on our rents, home values, and demographics. Coordination with other major projects. This project's construction will overlap with multiple large-scale public works, including the BQE Central and Red Hook Coastal Resiliency Project. These overlapping timelines threaten to create gridlock, detour conflicts, and emergency access problems across Southwest Brooklyn. We ask that the environmental review include a cumulative construction and detour management plan, one that models overlapping schedules, detours, transit speeds, emergency response times, and staging areas, and that these coordinated measures be enforceable, not merely advisory. In addition, the city should establish a community health and safety plan to keep residents informed about remediation activities, air quality monitoring, and construction schedules in real time. Public engagement process. The hearing on Tuesday demonstrated that the public is still largely unaware of the details.
15 seconds.
This is not genuine community engagement. The comment period must be extended to 120 days and include at least one public meeting in each of the 4 affected neighborhoods where the EDC explains the plan and hears the public's questions.
3 minutes.
This neighborhood deserves no less. Thank you.
Thanks very much, James. Appreciate your feedback. Okay, next we have up James DeFilippi.
Oh, hi. Okay. Hi, my name is James DeFilippis. I've been a resident of the Columbia Street Waterfront since 2003. My day job is that I'm a professor of urban planning at the Blaustein School of Planning and Policy at Rutgers University. I have a lot of things to say, and most of it will go in the written testimony because 3 minutes is insufficient to document all of the ways in which this draft scope of work needs at least another 2 or 3 drafts to go into it. The first issue, and that several people have already talked about, is the 400 foot study area. The idea that the environmental impacts of a project of this magnitude would extend less than 1 block from the site is absurd and defies anything like common sense. I'm not a land use attorney, and I don't know what the legal minimum you can get away with, but I am a person, and I do know that we should not confuse what I can get away with legally with what is the right thing to do here. By all reasonable expectations, we can assume that a project of this magnitude will have impacts, particularly around traffic and the environment, that go at least to Court Street in the Columbia Street waterfront and to 3rd Avenue in Red Hook, right? The second thing is that, the greenhouse gas emissions, modeling they have to do requires real detail estimations of traffic demand. But it seems incredibly difficult to do detailed modeling of traffic demand when we don't really have clarity about the time frame for the reconstruction of the BQE and what that would look like, and whether or not the on-ramp on the northbound side of Atlantic Avenue is actually even going to stay open. So how do you model transportation demand with that kind of glaring uncertainty? And I would urge the traffic demand modeling that would go into the greenhouse gas estimations to really include that. Relatedly, the draft scope of work severs this project from the BQE reconstruction, which is just silly, considering they're going to be coterminous in time. And they have to be considered together because the construction vehicles are going to be happening together. Finally, I'm glad to hear that you're doing a port-only analysis, and we've been asking for that for a really long time. I would also greatly urge a port-first analysis, and for both of them, I would want
15
real
seconds.
modeling of the environmental benefits of moving goods via the water, via maritime freight rather than trucks. Thus far, we have only talked about maritime freight as a cost
3
to
minutes.
be dealt with, and it needs to be recognized as a benefit. Thank you, and I look forward to submitting my testimony.
Thanks very much, James. Okay, moving on. Next, we have Julie Holstein. Julie Holstein. Hi, Julie.
Can you hear me? Sorry about that. Too many screens open. My name is Julie Holstein, and I've lived in the Cobble Hill area for more than 20 years. The BMT is a once-in-a-life opportunity to develop and revitalize 122 acres of Brooklyn waterfront that I use almost every day. We should set an example to the rest of the country, or heck, the rest of the world, on how New Yorkers can do hard things, collaborate from our communities on up, and build better, more creatively than anyone else, and leave something truly special behind for the next generations. With that said, I've been reading a lot of old articles and other revitalization plans going back to the late 1960s. Traffic and parking problems are nothing new. One proposal I read suggested closing the bridges over the BQE to traffic as a way to block trucks going to and from the port. I haven't owned a car for 20 plus years that I've lived in New York City, but I experienced firsthand that our streets surrounding the BMT are not equipped for cars, trucks, walkers, runners, bikers, e-bikes, Vespas, three-wheeled vehicles that are competing for a small amount of space. Every day, I witness cars making illegal turns, running red lights, blocking intersections. Unless you plan to enlarge Columbia Street into something like the West Side Highway, I don't see how you can add 20,000 more residents, commuters going to these new light industrial spaces, hotel workers, cruise passengers, restaurant workers. We need a comprehensive traffic study that extends east to 3rd and north to Tillery and south to Beard Street. As everyone knows, the BMT and the surrounding industrial areas include countless contaminated properties. Some have been remediated, others have not. There are 5 brownfield areas and sites just in the vicinity. There are open remediation plans in the BMT Atlantic Basin where there's benzene, toluene, I don't even know how to pronounce it, and other extremely dangerous enes have been found in the soil and the water. This needs to be studied. Every spill report and remediation plan reviewed east to 3rd, north to Tillery, and south to Beard Street to protect the water, soil, and surrounding residents. There are at least 7 or 8 schools less than a mile from the BMT. I would like you to study the impact of a massive construction project on air quality and what it means for families and young people commuting to and from school using public transportation. The economic outlook for hotels in New York City only look good for luxury runs. Financing is challenging right now for hotels in more robust tourist areas of the city and state. I would like you to study the economic feasibility of 400-room hotel in an area that only sees tourists coming through a few days a week. I have
15
many other
seconds.
suggestions for studies that a lot of my neighbors have already mentioned, and I'll include it in my written testimony. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. Next, we have up Sarah Pennenberg. Sarah Pennenberg.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
1 second. Sorry, I had a connection issue. My name is Sarah Pennenberg, and I'm here today representing SEIU Local 32BJ. 32BJ is the largest union of property service workers in the country, representing over 175,000 members across 13 states, including tens of thousands of commercial property service workers, security officers, and residential building staff in New York City. 32BJ supports development that invests in the continued success of surrounding communities, and we believe this project meets that description. The proposed development will include roughly 6,000 residential units, 40% of which will be income restricted for low to middle income residents, and the committee should be proud of the work they've done to achieve this transformative quantity of units and level of affordability. We need more housing to be built in every neighborhood of New York City, and we ensure that working families are not displaced by dwindling supply and skyrocketing rents. As the cost of living rises and working families and New Yorkers struggle to stay in their homes, it's more important than ever for us to create both affordable housing and good jobs which uphold industry standards. And for these reasons, 32BJ is in strong support of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We appreciate your testimony. Let's see. Next up, we have Leah Catucci. Leah Catucci. Hi there.
Hi, most people know me as Leah Carroll. My maiden name is Leah Carroll. My married name is Leah Catucci. Sorry, I just got really nervous right as I started to do this. So I've been in this area. I've been in Cobble Hill. I've been in this area for 10 years, the last 6 in Columbia Street waterfront. First, I would like to say that the EIS should include a permanent home for Portside and examine the negative effects that the eviction of Portside would have on the community in terms of education, community engagement, quality of life, and the neighborhood character. I want to add that the should be an extension of 120 days for the community to more adequately engage with the vision plan and the draft scope of work. As someone with a young child who currently attends PS 29, I'd like to first address the potential long-term environmental risks of this project. This project will outlast many of us by many years, and I believe that DEIS needs to study until at least 2150 at the very least to conduct analyses around flooding, resilience, and storm events as our climate changes rapidly. We also need to study for this time period the public health exposure of potentially hazardous materials, both for the time the project is being built and any effects that might be experienced in the near and long-term future. As we can all see from today's storm, our current sewer and road infrastructure is outdated and overwhelmed. This summer, Columbia Street Waterfront and Red Hook experienced electricity operating at half capacity, no elevators for disabled and elderly people, and food that spoiled in refrigerators in rent-burdened communities. More than once, we lost power completely. I would like to ask that the study area be expanded greatly beyond the current 400 feet in the neighboring communities, and specifically study how the existing power and sewer grids will function in these areas, particularly with the proposed addition of 6,000 units of housing, and how the infrastructure of our electricity and sewers can be improved upon before, during, and after any construction begins. And that means starting now. Right now, our streets are clogged with traffic from trucks and people who are bypassing the BQE closure at Hamilton Ave. There is speeding, passing in the opposite lane, stopping in crosswalks, and blocking the box that make it incredibly dangerous to walk or ride bicycles, particularly in an area where there are many children and many children walking to many schools. The scoping plan must include planning scenarios and models that project how traffic will be affected now and in the future, and that these models should be conducted in robust cooperation with the DOT as they are now functioning separately. The model should be shared with the public, and the public should be allowed time to engage with them, as we are the ones that currently experience the brunt of this. I'm going to address further topics in my written testimony. I want to thank all my other neighbors for testifying and for you allowing me the time to testify here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. We appreciate your testimony. Next we have Katie Sigler. Katie Sigler. Okay, great.
Hi there. My name is Katie Sigler. I'm an over 20-year resident at the Cobble Hill Towers building, where I live on the east side of Hicks Street. I want to echo the prior comments about my primary concern related to this project. I mean, I have a lot of concerns about this project, but one of the most significant impacts for me and my family and my neighbors will be traffic issues. I really think that this is a fundamentally flawed plan to try to add this much volume of activity, residents, port activity, etc., into an area that was cut off by the BQE trench many decades ago. I just want to point out that currently there are 4 crossings over the trench of the BQE between Atlantic and the tunnel. There are 2 one-way streets heading west and 2 one-way streets heading east, which is a lot of people to move over 4 one-way streets. My vantage point on Hicks Street shows that the recent increase in car and especially truck volume using surface streets because the BQE was cut from 3 lanes to 2 on the cantilever, as well as traffic, again, especially truck traffic coming from Amazon and similar facilities in the Red Hook area, has taxed our surface streets and has turned the experience of living over the trench of the BQE into an experience of feeling like I am a Frogger character living in the overflow of the BQE as that traffic moves north on Hicks, on Columbia, on Clinton, and beyond. To limit the study area in such a way that doesn't include the neighboring neighborhoods of Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, Brooklyn Heights, Red Hook, let alone doesn't even include the east side of Hicks Street, really demonstrates that there's not a good faith traffic study as part of your plan. And I would ask that that be something that's added to the scope of work. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Katie. Next up, we have Carolina Salguero. Carolina Salguero.
Hi, did you just call on me, Carolina Salguero?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I just stepped away to turn the fence off for the noise.
That's how it always goes. All right, thank you.
So yeah, I'm Carolina Salguero, the founder and ED of Portside, New York. We are currently based on the ship Mary Whalen and have been located on BMT on either Pier 9B or Atlantic Basin Pier 11 since summer 2006. The SEGRE process lists some 18 categories of impact to study. Maritime is unfortunately not called out as a category, and so I am still looking at how to actually really address this within the process. I think it's a real issue. But I will say that I think, like Tom Fox, the scoping period should be delayed until the maritime RFEI responses are in and assessed, and want to know, can those be made public? I think that's important information for all of us to consider, but I don't know if they're considered confidential and proprietary. The 400-foot radius of the study is really preposterous and needs to be expanded. Just from the vehicular traffic point of view, it has to go inland to 4th Avenue, south to Prospect Expressway, north to Tillery Street. The maritime footprint at BMT needs study. I mean, for example, where will displaced vessels go? And in the EDC's vision plan, many would be displaced. Also, there's insufficient sewer capacity for what the EDC proposes. The whole Red Hook sewer shed needs to be studied, including the effects of the not yet fully occupied or even fully built buildings in the Gowanus. That's the same sewer shed. I spoke to Joanne Simon at the in-person hearing 2 nights ago to follow up on what she had in her newsletter about a lack of water supply. And so what she said is there's insufficient actual piping to deliver the water within the BMT footprint. So that needs to be studied in addition to meaning the potable water, not the sewage water. DEP handles both, but I think that's a very good point. Having been here in Red Hook during Hurricane Sandy, I think it's, and have been, courts have been very involved with resiliency issues since then. I think it's irresponsible to create this kind of amount of housing in the flood zone. It's a risk to human life and taxpayer investment. I'm going to skip now, seeing the clock here, over to some maritime stuff. The EDC has to do a coastal zone consistency determination under the New York State Department of State policies and the city's DCP waterfront revitalization program. The latter actually includes what Portside has been trying to do for years. I also want to say, since the clock is really running here, the Mary Whale's on the National Register of Historic Places and thus mentioned in the DSOW. And so for the ship to survive, the larger organization of Portside needs to survive, which means we need more space than just berth space for the boat.
15 seconds.
We can't, just putting us somewhere else doesn't solve it. Our work is very embedded in the local community, from the resiliency, the virtual museum, Red Hook water stories, the ship's an artifact of Red Hook history.
3 minutes.
So we belong here, and that needs to be addressed in a way that has not happened. We've been basically erased from EDC descriptions of the site. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolina. We appreciate your testimony and feedback. So right now we have exhausted the list of people who either signed up to talk ahead of time or raised their hand to speak earlier in this call. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please raise your hand if so. Okay, I see we have Zach.
Hi, my name's Zach. I'm a longtime resident of the Columbia Street waterfront and Brooklyn Heights community. Have been in Columbia Street waterfront for close to 7 years, and if you include time in Brooklyn Heights, over a decade. And I remember one day waking up to discover that the volume of traffic on our street, which had previously been a rather quiet residential street, had increased dramatically. And didn't take long to figure out it was the same day that they shut down one lane on the BQE. This has become a major thoroughfare for traffic bypassing the lane closure on the BQE. And given the fact that these projects are concurrent, coterminous, and the study area overlaps with proposed construction and staging area of the DOT's mega project on the BQE and the state project on the BQE, I think it must be included in the environmental impact statement. I don't understand how it is feasible that you will have additional disruptions to the BQE, all the construction vehicles that need to support that project, as well as the huge project here, even be functional, let alone the impact it might have. I encourage the expansion of the study area well beyond 400 feet. You look at those maps, and I agree it's preposterous that you could possibly consider the impact's only extending that far, given the scale and size of this project and the fact that we know that nearby projects have already impacted areas far beyond 400 feet outside the site. So those are my primary comments. I'd also like to make a comment, and I don't know how the Parks Department is involved, but this will have an impact on Van Voorhees Park, and which is also going to be impacted by the BQE project. It's proposed to be a staging ground and rebuilt. I would like the impact on Van Voorhees Park to be considered in the draft EIS and in the scope of work for potential inclusion in the BMT site to help potentially reduce density of needed construction and housing directly in that site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Zach. I saw another hand from Michelle Wellington. Michelle, you are up.
Hi. So I didn't prepare formal testimony for today, but because there's time for my voice, I just wanted to share some personal perspectives. So I live on the Columbia Street waterfront and I have 3 young children. One is 6, one is 4, and one is 2. The 2 older ones attend PS 29. And I am very concerned about the traffic and just generally how dangerous the buses and like just all around everything that's going on. And I know we've talked a lot about it on today's call, but I feel it's really important for me to reiterate it. I have to cross Columbia Street every day with my kids at DeGraw, like in front of the Alma restaurant. And I cannot tell you how many times I have seen buses and cars just like zip by. It is so dangerous. I'm always terrified for my young kids that like something's going to happen. And I just cannot iterate enough like how like hard it is to understand and digest that we are trying to add this kind of population growth in that area without some sort of traffic solution. And that's just one concern. And then, obviously the air pollution thing is something that I think about a lot as a mother. We haven't talked a lot on this call about the recycling mix, but we've been dealing with that on the Columbia Street waterfront for the last 2 years. And I've been very concerned about the air quality. And now to have to think about this construction project and what it'll mean with like the increases in air pollution are very concerning to me. And I want to understand like what we're doing to try to mitigate traffic and mitigate like air impacts for our young families that live down there.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. Is there anyone else interested in speaking today? All right, Catherine DeGennaro, you are on deck.
Hi, and sorry, like Michelle, I joined today just coming from work, not having prepared any sort of statement. So forgive me for not having something as formal as many of my neighbors here whose concerns I share. But I did want to say on record, I live in the Columbia Waterfront District right now. I've been in the area for about 10 years, including in Red Hook. And as this meeting goes on today, there's flooding in the neighborhood. Close friends of mine who are now starting to clean up and bail water yet again out of their apartments or studios. And I feel that the task force so far has been pretty flippant about the neighborhood's concerns about climate resilience and infrastructure issues. And given how overloaded the sewer system is here, as someone else pointed out, as we share the sewer system with Gowanus, where there's a lot of construction going on, this has become a really routine problem for my neighbors and in my community. So I want to air that here. I share a lot of the other concerns about traffic, living right off of Columbia, being a frequent, although less frequent recently, rider of the B61, given how much traffic there is going towards Atlantic. I think everyone here has shared many of my concerns, but I just wanted to share right now that I'm literally getting photos again of flooding in our neighborhood as this goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Do we have any other Last moment speakers. Okay, oh, Carolina.
I just wanted to say that you should not end this before the time period in case people are going to log in late. The in-person meeting shut down early, and there were people who arrived to testify but couldn't. And I think if you've announced a time of 6 p.m., I just want to make sure that you do stay for the full time.
Yes, I was actually just about to announce that if we run out of speakers, we will stay on regardless until I think about 6:30.
Great, because the flooding is considerable, and I can imagine people are having a hard time getting home.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I think Caitlin Kraus is up next.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'll keep it very brief. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I second, third, fourth, and fifth, all of the comments that have been here today. And to just kind of further put in perspective where I'm coming from, I had the opportunity to serve as an advisory, part of the advisory group, with a focus on NYCHA youth and NYCHA. In none of this do I see really any benefits or anything that makes the quality of life or opportunities better in any way. In fact, it seems like everything's about to get a lot worse. So respectfully, we all ask that more thought and consideration be given. The square footage of what we're looking at literally in the environmental impact be widened, and that all elements of quality of life, from air to the water, to the sewer, to the real reality of what this redevelopment would do, and also more consideration and thought be put into the Mariner side of this, because with that comes more opportunities for people living locally and beyond. So just on the record, wanted to just represent that I don't really see anywhere that things get better for NYCHA residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And do we have any other hands? As I previously mentioned, we will be staying on this call until 6:30. Okay, so since we don't have any other hands for now, I think I will just go off camera until we get another. And then if we get more hands or people join later, we can get started again. Otherwise, yeah, we will wait until 6:30. Thank you. Hi all. It looks like we have a hand raised. Just giving people a couple seconds to rejoin. Okay, I guess I will hand it over to Ariel.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, super. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for keeping this open because I just got off of work. But my name is Ariel Alexevich. And I am a resident of Carroll Gardens. I've lived there for more than 10 years. And yeah, thanks for this opportunity to submit testimony today. So I'm a volunteer in the neighborhood with some of the feral cat colonies that live in the Brooklyn Marine Terminal and actually all over Red Hook. And one thing that I would request this committee do is to do a survey of feral cat populations that live on the proposed BMT site and do a survey of how many are there, where they feeding stations are, and come up with a plan of what we're supposed to do as community members who feed these cats, who like care for them, to the TNR of them. Because all of this is done out of our own pockets, and this burden, when the construction starts, is going to fall to us. And it's a big concern we have. We live in small apartments and do this out of the kindness of our hearts, and want to just know what's going on. And so far, there's been no response from CDC about this, so that will be great. And also, I do also request to expand the study area beyond the 400-foot perimeter. It should at least go to 3rd Avenue and Tillery Street. I request that everyone here coordinate the overlapping mega projects like EQE, reconstruction, Red Hook coastal resiliency. And then I also request that everyone extend the impact time horizon beyond the 2038 build year, future analysis years for coastal flooding, sewer, energy. This will all help our climate mitigation. We know we live in a flooded area prone to flooding as we see today. And of course, I also ask for more assessment of the transportation situation there. For cars, trucks, blue highways, public transportation, etc. And also a detailed natural resources assessment would be really great. So I think I'll leave it there, but thank you for this opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ariel. We appreciate your testimony today. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. So we will just continue to do as we were doing a second ago. I'll be here with my screen off. You have until 6:30 to sign up to speak today. So yeah, if you have any friends running behind, you can let them know we're still on. All right. Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. I see we have another raised hand. Just giving people a couple seconds to return. And let's see. All right, Sahil, you are on deck.
Hey, how's it going? I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions, but I was curious about there's this BMT South project that got canceled as part of this. And it seems like, just looking at Google Maps, like would be great to have housing there. It just seems like a empty piece of land, prime real estate. So yeah, I guess I would just advocate for building as much housing as possible. And I would love to know why that was canceled.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sahil. And also, you can submit written testimony as well, if you want to specifically point out which area, etc. But thanks for your feedback. Oh, and yeah, we will respond to that in the final scope of work. If you put your question, or we're responding to the questions here as well, but if you had a specific area you wanted to mention, feel free to email me. But okay, yeah. We don't have any additional questions right now. We will be on standby for another 10 minutes or so. And yeah, please, if any last questions, please ask them now. Thanks. Hi, I see we have another question, hand raised for giving testimony. Just giving people a second. All right, Amy, if the floor is yours for testimony. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Breedlove, Cobble Hill, former president of Cobble Hill Association, former chair of the CHA Waterfront Infrastructure Committee, and the BQE work. I noticed that a number of people have given a couple of days of testimony, so I plan on giving a more thorough testimony in December. But I have a specific question about figure 4 in the SECRA document in the draft scope of work. And that is, why is Pier 12 through 7 listed as transportation and utility as its current use? While 9A and 9B are vacant, which we understand because they're falling apart. And there are manufacturing facility just off of Van Brunt, but that's the only manufacturing listed on the site. So I'm trying to understand why it's not listed as industrial and manufacturing when it is an IBZ, but instead is listed as transportation and utility as its use. I think that this will weigh in heavily on the EIS, so I would like that to be addressed.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for your testimony. For anyone else interested in providing feedback or comment, it is currently 6 minutes until 6:30. Yeah, we'll stay on the line until 6:30. Oh. Okay, Carolina.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks. Will a recording of this scoping hearing be available, and if so, when?
Let me see here. I believe we will be posting a recording to yes, we will be posting a recording to the EDC webpage for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. It'll be posted by the end of next week.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Alrighty. Hello again, everyone. It is officially 6:30 p.m. As there are no other speakers registered and nobody else has raised their hand, I think it's time that we will close the meeting. Thank you again for joining us today for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal Maritime and Mixed Use Redevelopment Project virtual public scoping meeting. As mentioned earlier, please note you can submit any comments you have on the draft scope via the addresses that are on screen, whether by mail or email to me, Emily Slokowski. That information, if you didn't write it down, is also available in the notice for the public scoping meeting. Written comments will be accepted through the end of the day on December 11th. And we do have the in-person public meeting on Monday, December 1st. And yeah, that's it. I look forward to receiving everyone's feedback and appreciate you all being here tonight. Thank you, and I'll see you hopefully December 1st. Thank you. Good night.